Picture the desert at night. The Milky Way stretches overhead like a river of ancient light, each star a distant furnace that died long before the first human ever looked upward. The sand beneath still holds the warmth of day, and somewhere in the darkness, wind moves through canyon walls carved over millions of years. This is the kind of night our ancestors knew before cities, before agriculture, before written language gave shape to memory. But what if those ancestors were not entirely like us? What if the blood flowing through modern veins carries more than just the legacy of Homo sapiens? What if it whispers of other beings, other lineages, other chapters in a story far stranger than we've imagined? For most of human history, we believed ourselves to be singular, a species that emerged clean and separate from the evolutionary tree, the final and definitive form of humanity. We told ourselves we were the last hominins standing, that all others had faded into extinction, leaving no trace in our bodies or our bones. But DNA tells a different story. It speaks in a language older than myth, more precise than memory. And what it says is this: we are not pure. We are not singular. We are hybrids walking mosaics of multiple ancient lineages, each contributing something essential to what we now call human. The question is no longer whether we carry the genetic legacy of other species. Science has confirmed that much. The question now is deeper, stranger, more unsettling. How many others contributed to our genome? What did they look like? What did they think? And most mysteriously of all, could there be lineages we haven't yet discovered, hidden in the shadows of our chromosomes like forgotten ancestors waiting to be named? This is a journey into the mystery of our own blood, into the genetic echoes that suggest we are far more than we ever imagined, and far less certain about where we truly came from. The breakthrough came quietly, as many scientific revolutions do. In 2010, researchers at the Max Planck Institute in Germany published findings that would rewrite the human story. They had sequenced the Neanderthal genome, extracting ancient DNA from bones tens of thousands of years old, and discovered something no one had fully anticipated. Modern humans and Neanderthals had interbred. Not once, not as a rare anomaly, but repeatedly over thousands of years. The genetic evidence was unmistakable. Between 1 and 4% of non-African human DNA comes directly from Neanderthals. It meant that these stocky, heavy-browed people who vanished from Europe around 40,000 years ago had not simply died out, they had merged into us. The old narrative collapsed almost overnight. For decades, anthropologists had framed the relationship between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals as competitive, even hostile. We were the innovative newcomers. They were the evolutionary dead end. When modern humans migrated out of Africa and into Europe, the thinking went, we simply replaced them, outcompeted, outlasted, survived while they perished. But the DNA revealed a more intimate truth. When our ancestors encountered Neanderthals in the cold valleys of Ice Age Europe, they did not only fight or flee, they formed relationships. They had children together, and those children carried forward genes that still influence us today, genes related to immune function, skin pigmentation, even susceptibility to certain diseases. It was a revelation that forced science to reconsider what it means to be human. We are not the pure descendants of a single African lineage. We are quite literally the children of interspecies unions, hybrids, born from encounters in a world we can barely imagine, where multiple kinds of humans walked the same frozen landscapes, hunted the same prey, and somewhere in the flickering light of ancient fires chose each other. Yet even as this discovery reshaped our understanding, it raised another question, one that would prove even more profound. If Neanderthals contributed to our genome, who else might have? In 2008, Russian archaeologists working in the Altai Mountains of Siberia uncovered a fragment of a finger bone in a cave called Denisova. The bone was small, just the tip of a pinky finger from a child who had died perhaps 50,000 years ago. At first, It seemed unremarkable. But when geneticists extracted DNA from the fragment, they realized they were looking at something entirely new. This was not a Neanderthal. It was not a modern human. It was a third lineage of sister species that had diverged from our common ancestors hundreds of thousands of years earlier and had lived, thrived, and eventually vanished into the genetic mist. They named them Denisovans, after the cave where that single finger bone was found. To this day, we know almost nothing about what they looked like. A handful of teeth, a fragment of skull, a jawbone discovered in Tibet. That is the entirety of the physical evidence. No complete skeleton, no clear image of their faces. And yet, their DNA persists. Across Asia, Oceania, and the Pacific Islands, modern populations carry Denisovan ancestry. Indigenous Australians, Papuans, Melanesian some groups carry as much as 5% Denisovan DNA, far more than the global average of Neanderthal ancestry. These genes are not relics. They are functional, active, conferring advantages that allowed populations to adapt to extreme environments. One of the most striking examples involves high-altitude survival. Tibetans possess a gene variant called EPAS1, inherited from Denisovans, that allows their bodies to function efficiently in low oxygen conditions. It is a gift from a species that disappeared millennia ago, yet it saves lives today. But here's the deeper mystery. If Denisovans contributed so significantly to the genetics of modern humans, where did they live? How widespread were they? And how many distinct Denisovan populations existed? The DNA suggests multiple groups, separated by geography and time, each interbreeding with modern humans in different eras. It is as if entire civilizations of these ghost people once thrived across Asia, leaving no monuments, no art, no cities, only the faintest genetic signature in our blood. Meanwhile, deeper in the data, geneticists began noticing something else. Patterns that didn't quite fit. DNA sequences that matched neither Neanderthal nor Denisovan nor modern human. Fragments of inheritance that seemed to come from nowhere. And with that discovery, the story grew stranger still. There are shadows in the genome, regions of DNA that do not align neatly with any known hominin group. Some researchers call these anomalies ghost DNA genetic material inherited from populations that left no fossils, no tools, no trace beyond the faint echo embedded in our chromosomes. In 2019, a study published in Nature Communications analyzed the genomes of West African populations and found evidence of interbreeding with an unknown archaic hominin. This was not Neanderthal DNA. Neanderthals never lived in sub-Saharan Africa. It was not Denisovan either. It was something else, something unidentified. The researchers estimated that this ghost population diverged from modern humans over 1 million years ago, far earlier than the split with Neanderthals or Denisovans. And yet, between 2 and 19% of the genetic ancestry in some West African groups appears to come from this mysterious lineage. It suggests that deep in Africa's past, while Homo sapiens was still emerging as a distinct species, our ancestors encountered others, and those encounters left marks we are only now beginning to decode. But the ghost lineage is not limited to Africa. Similar anomalies have been detected in Asian genomes, in Oceania, even in ancient DNA from Southeast Asia. Some scientists propose that these signals represent not one but multiple unknown hominin groups' populations that adapted to isolated environments, evolved in parallel, and only occasionally intersected with the expanding wave of Homo sapiens. Could there have been a super-archaic human species, something older and more divergent than anything yet discovered? Or were there dozens of small, isolated populations scattered across the ancient world, each contributing a few genes before vanishing entirely? The fossil record offers no answers. No bones have been definitively linked to these ghost lineages. It is as if they existed in the spaces between too rare or too remote to leave behind the kind of evidence paleontologists depend on. And yet, they were real. They lived. They bred with our ancestors. And their legacy persists in millions of people alive today, invisible but undeniable. As the climate shifted and human populations migrated, these encounters would have been rare. Fleeting a meeting at the edge of a forest, a shared camp during a storm, a child born under circumstances we can only imagine. Centuries earlier, when the world was warmer and wetter, Africa itself was a mosaic of environments, each supporting its own evolutionary experiments. Perhaps that diversity, human and otherwise, was far greater than we ever suspected. In 2002, cave explorers in Romania discovered a human skull in a cavern system known as Pectorasiu, the cave with bones. The skull, designated Awaken, belonged to a young male who had died roughly 40,000 years ago. At first, it seemed like another ancient Homo sapiens find, valuable but not extraordinary. Then scientists sequenced his genome. What they found was astonishing. Awaken carried between 6 and 9% Neanderthal DNA, a more than double the amount found in any living person today. More than that, the genetic data suggested that this individual had a Neanderthal ancestor just 4 to 6 generations back. Not thousands of years in the past. Recent, close, perhaps a great-great-grandparent. It meant that this young man was living proof of a hybrid family, a lineage in which modern humans and Neanderthals did not simply encounter each other in passing but lived together, raised children together, blurred the boundaries of species. And yet, Awaken left no descendants. His genetic line did not continue into the modern human population. He represents a branch that ended, a hybrid experiment that did not propagate. It raises an unsettling possibility. How many such lineages existed? How many times did humans and other hominins interbreed, only for those unions to fade away without contributing to the future? Awaken is a reminder that the human story is not a single thread, but a tangled web full of dead ends, lost branches, and moments where different kinds of people came together, made families, and then vanished into time. But another possibility emerges from the data. If one child carried so much Neanderthal ancestry, there must have been and to understand the science behind these discoveries. One must first grasp how geneticists reconstruct the past. DNA is not a perfect record. It mutates, recombines, and degrades over time. But it retains patterns, signatures of ancestry that can be traced backward through generations. The mainstream model of human evolution now accepts that Homo sapiens did not evolve in isolation. Instead, our species emerged in Africa roughly 300,000 years ago and began migrating outward in waves. As these populations moved into Europe, Asia, and beyond, they encountered other hominin groups, Neanderthals in the West, Denisovans in the East, and potentially others whose identities remain unknown. These encounters resulted in what scientists call introgression, the transfer of genetic material from one species into another through interbreeding. It is a common process in evolutionary biology, seen in wolves and dogs, in various bird species, in plants. What makes the human case remarkable is not that it happened, but how recently, how extensively, and how much those ancient genes still matter. Neanderthal DNA, for instance, influences immune responses, helping modern humans fight off pathogens. It affects skin and hair traits, contributing to the diversity of human appearance. Some Neanderthal genes are associated with mood disorders, suggesting that even our psychology may carry echoes of these ancient unions. Denisovan DNA, meanwhile, confers advantages in specific environments, high altitudes, cold climates, island ecosystems. It is not random inheritance. It is functional, adaptive, evidence that hybridization did not weaken our species, but enriched it. The family tree of humanity is no longer a straight line. It is a braided stream, with branches diverging and reconnecting, populations splitting apart and merging again. And the more scientists study it, the more complex it becomes. Each new genome sequenced reveals additional layers, additional mixtures, additional proof that we are not descended from a single ancestor, but from many. Still, this mainstream model, rigorous and evidence-based as it is, leaves room for deeper questions. If interbreeding was so common, so advantageous, could there have been other unions more dramatic, more transformative, that changed the course of human evolution in ways we have yet to fully understand? Entire communities where hybridity was the norm, not the exception. Beyond the peer-reviewed journals and university labs, another narrative has taken root, one that asks whether humanity's rapid rise was not gradual evolution, but something more abrupt, more dramatic. The premise is this: what if Homo sapiens as we know it, with our unique cognitive abilities, our capacity for language, art, and abstract thought emerged, not through slow natural selection, but through a sudden genetic fusion? What if, at some point deep in prehistory, modern humans interbred with a lineage far more advanced, more cognitively developed, than any hominin we have yet discovered? This is not a claim about extraterrestrials, at least not in most versions of the hypothesis. Suddenly, the archaeological record fills with evidence of symbolic art, complex tool-making, long-distance trade, and burial rituals. It is as if a switch was flipped, and humans became more. Mainstream science attributes this to cultural evolution, to accumulated knowledge passed down through generations. But the hybrid hypothesis asks, what if it was genetic? What if interbreeding introduced new neural structures, new cognitive capacities that allowed for symbolic thought, recursive language, and imagination? There is no definitive proof. No fossilized skull of a super hominin, no clear genetic marker that says, this is where advanced intelligence entered the human genome. And yet, the question lingers. If Neanderthals and Denisovans left their mark on us, why couldn't there have been other populations whose contribution was not physical resilience or immune function, but something more profound? Something cognitive, creative, something that made us truly human. As the climate shifted once again, bringing new ice and new migrations, the opportunities for such encounters would have multiplied. Perhaps in those liminal moments, at the edges of habitability, the most transformative hybrids were born. There are moments in the archaeological record that feel like rupture's sudden appearances of complexity that seem to emerge from nowhere. One of the most striking occurs around 40,000 years ago in Europe, when a cascade of artistic and technological innovations floods the continent in what is known as the Upper Paleolithic Revolution. Cave paintings appear at Lascaux and Chauvet, rendered with such sophistication that they rival modern art. Carved figurines, Venus statues, animal totems spread across vast distances, suggesting shared symbolic systems. Musical instruments made from bone and ivory indicate not just survival, but culture, leisure, expression. And the tools themselves become more refined, more specialized, more ingenious. Mainstream archaeologists explain this as the result of cumulative cultural evolution. Humans had always been capable of such things, the theory goes, but the right environmental and social conditions had not yet aligned. Population density increased, allowing for greater exchange of ideas. Language became more complex, enabling abstract thought to be shared and refined across generations. But there is another interpretation, one that asks whether such rapid, widespread change could have had a genetic component. If modern humans interbred with a cognitively advanced lineage, whether Neanderthal, Denisovan, or something unknown, could that genetic infusion have catalyzed a leap in cognitive capacity? Consider language. Modern humans possess a unique version of the FOXP2 gene, critical for speech and language processing. Neanderthals had a version of this gene nearly identical to ours, suggesting they, too, could speak. But what if there were other genes, other neural adaptations that came from interbreeding? What if the hybrid offspring inherited cognitive abilities from multiple lineages, creating a synergy that neither parent species possessed alone? It is speculation, but not baseless. Hybrid vigor, a phenomenon where crossbreeding produces offspring with enhanced traits, is well documented in biology. Could the same principle apply to cognition? Could the mingling of hominin lineages have produced minds more capable, more adaptable than any single species could achieve? The discontinuities in the archaeological record do not prove this, but they invite the question: why did humans, after hundreds of thousands of years of relatively static behavior, suddenly explode into creativity, innovation, and symbolic thought? Was it purely cultural? Or was there something deeper, something written into the genome that unlocked new possibilities? Meanwhile, buried in the genetic data, researchers continued to uncover oddities, genes that did not fit the standard narrative, sequences that seemed to come from nowhere. And in that mystery, a new kind of question began to form. In 2001, a controversial study claimed that the human genome contained dozens of genes that appeared to have been acquired through horizontal gene transfer, meaning they did not come from our direct ancestors, but were somehow inserted from other organisms, possibly bacteria. A number most often cited was 28 genes, sequences that did not appear in any other primate, but showed up in bacteria and other microorganisms. The scientific community reacted skeptically. Horizontal gene transfer is common in single-celled organisms, but exceedingly rare in complex life. Critics argued that the sequences in question were likely the result of contamination, misidentification, or ancient viral insertions that had been misinterpreted. Subsequent research largely debunked the claim. Most of the genes in question were reclassified as either ancient vertebrate genes lost in other primates or the result of normal evolutionary processes. The idea that humans had borrowed genetic material from bacteria was dismissed as an artifact of incomplete data. And yet, the episode highlights a deeper truth. The human genome is full of mysteries. There are stretches of DNA whose function remains unknown. There are genes whose origins are difficult to trace. And while the 28 genes claim may have been flawed, it points to the reality that our understanding of inheritance is still incomplete. Could there be genetic sequences in the human genome that came from unexpected sources? Not necessarily bacteria, but from archaic hominins so distant, so divergent, that their DNA looks foreign. Could some of the ghost DNA researchers have identified represent lineages so old, so unlike anything currently recognized, that they defy easy categorization? Science does not yet have those answers. But the fact that such questions can even be asked, that our genome contains enough ambiguity to spark such debates, is itself revealing. We are still learning what we are made of, and every new discovery seems to add complexity rather than clarity. But another possibility emerges when we step outside the laboratory and into the realm of myth, where ancient cultures spoke of beings who shaped humanity, beings they described not as gods, but as something stranger, something that came from the sky. Long before DNA sequencing, long before paleontology and genetics gave us tools to reconstruct the past, humans told stories. And in those stories, across cultures separated by oceans and millennia, a recurring theme appears: the idea that humanity was shaped, taught, or altered by beings who came from elsewhere. The Dogon people of Mali speak of the Namo, amphibious beings who descended from the star Sirius and brought knowledge of astronomy and agriculture. What if they are cultural memories of something else encounters with other hominin species, groups that seemed different, perhaps more advanced in certain ways, and whose interactions with early Homo sapiens left a profound impact? Imagine a population of early humans encountering a group of Denisovans or another archaic lineage with different physical features, different tool-making techniques, different ways of thinking. To those early humans, these others might have seemed almost otherworldly. And when interbreeding occurred, when children were born with traits from both lineages, those unions might have been remembered, mythologized, woven into stories that persisted for tens of thousands of years. It is not a claim that myths are history, but it is worth considering that myths may preserve echoes of real encounters, distorted by time, and retelling, yet rooted in something that once happened. Centuries earlier, when human populations were smaller and more isolated, such encounters would have been rare, memorable, possibly seen as miraculous. Of course, mainstream scholarship offers a very different reading of these myths, one rooted not in lost lineages, but in the universal structures of human culture. Around 12,800 years ago, the Earth entered a period of rapid and severe climate change known as the Younger Dryas. For over 1,000 years, temperatures plummeted, glaciers advanced, and much of the northern hemisphere was plunged back into near ice age conditions. The cause remains debated. Some scientists point to disruptions in ocean currents caused by melting ice sheets. Others suggest a comet impact or a series of volcanic eruptions. Whatever the trigger, the effects were catastrophic. Megafauna mammoths, giant sloths, saber-toothed cats went extinct. Plant ecosystems collapsed. Human populations, which had been expanding during the warmer period preceding the Younger Dryas, were suddenly thrust into survival mode, and yet humanity adapted. In the Levant, people began cultivating wild grains, laying the groundwork for agriculture. In Anatolia, the site of Göbekli Tepe was constructed a massive stone temple complex that predates agriculture and settled civilization, suggesting that even in the midst of climatic upheaval, humans were capable of monumental symbolic expression. But what if this period of extreme environmental stress also facilitated genetic mixing? As populations migrated in search of resources, previously isolated groups would have encountered one another. Refugia small pockets of habitable land would have concentrated diverse lineages, increasing the likelihood of interbreeding. Could the Younger Dryas have been a genetic crucible, a time when the last remnants of archaic hominin populations interbred with expanding Homo sapiens groups, contributing final genetic infusions before vanishing entirely? The timeline aligns. Neanderthals and Denisovans had already disappeared by this point, but if ghost populations persisted in isolated regions, mountains, islands, deep forests, the climatic chaos could have driven them into contact with modern humans one last time. There is no direct evidence, but the hypothesis is tantalizing. The Younger Dryas was a reset, a moment when the old world ended and the new one began. When it ended, roughly 11,600 years ago, the climate stabilized, ice sheets retreated, and human civilization began its inexorable rise. Within a few millennia, agriculture, cities, writing, and empires emerged. It was as if humanity had crossed a threshold, and on the other side, everything changed. But another possibility emerges from the margins of history and archaeology, a theory that suggests the climatic turn was not just a reset, but the erasure of something older, something more advanced than conventional timelines allow. What if the myths of lost civilizations Atlantis, Lemuria, Mu, are not entirely fiction? Not literal sunken continents populated by advanced beings, but distorted memories of real human cultures that existed during the ice age and were largely erased by the Younger Dryas cataclysm? This alternative view, popularized by researchers like Graham Hancock, proposes that a sophisticated maritime culture existed before the end of the last ice age, a people who understood astronomy, navigation, and possibly agriculture. When the ice sheets melted and sea levels rose by over 400 feet, their coastal settlements were submerged. The survivors, scattered and reduced, integrated into the populations of Neolithic peoples, passing down fragments of their knowledge. Could these survivors have been genetically distinct? Not aliens, but perhaps a hybrid population, descendants of ancient interbreeding events between Homo sapiens and archaic hominins who carried unique cognitive traits. If their DNA was already rare, and their numbers reduced to a handful after the Younger Dryas, their genetic contribution might be nearly invisible today, buried in the noise of the genome. There is no mainstream acceptance of this theory. Archaeologists point out that there is no solid evidence of Ice Age civilizations with the kind of sophistication being proposed. Submerged ruins are either natural formations or post-Ice Age structures. The genetic data, while complex, does not clearly support the existence of a recent, highly advanced hominin lineage. And yet, the idea persists. It persists because it offers an explanation for the strange consistency of certain myths, for the sudden appearance of advanced knowledge in the Neolithic, for the sense unscientific, but compelling that humanity's past is deeper, stranger, and more layered than we can fully remember. If such a people existed, and if they interbred with the broader human population, their legacy would not be monuments or artifacts. It would be us, our genes, our minds, our inexplicable drive to create, explore, and understand. Meanwhile, buried in the DNA of ancient remains, scientists continued to find surprises, traits that should not have existed, features that defied expectation, reminders that even when we think we understand the past, it has more secrets to reveal. In 2014, geneticists analyzing the DNA of a 7,000-year-old skeleton from Spain made a startling discovery. The individual, a hunter-gatherer from the Mesolithic period, had dark skin and blue eyes, a combination almost never seen in modern populations. The finding overturned assumptions about how human pigmentation evolved. It had been widely believed that lighter skin developed in Europe as an adaptation to lower sunlight levels, allowing for better vitamin D synthesis. But this ancient Spaniard showed that the genetic variants for light skin and light eyes evolved independently and spread at different rates. More surprising still, similar genetic patterns have been found in ancient remains from Africa and the Near East. Individuals with ancestry that should have resulted in dark skin and eyes sometimes carried the genes for blue or green eyes. It is a reminder that ancient human populations were genetically far more variable than modern ones, a mosaic of traits that have since been homogenized by millennia of mixing. But here is the deeper mystery. Where did those eye color genes come from? Did they arise independently in different populations through random mutation? Or were they inherited from archaic hominins, Neanderthals, Denisovans, or unknown lineages who already carried them? We know that Neanderthals had genes for red hair and pale skin. We know that Denisovans adapted to high altitudes and cold climates, likely evolving their own pigmentation traits. It is not unreasonable to think that some of the diversity in ancient human appearance came from hybridization, from the blending of traits across species. And if eye color could be inherited from archaic lineages, what else might have been? Facial structure? Metabolic efficiency? Cognitive traits? The more we learn about the genetics of ancient peoples, the more we realize that the boundaries between species were not sharp lines, but gradients, zones of overlap where traits flowed freely between populations. But the hybridity we carry is not just physical. It is neurological, psychological, woven into the very structure of our brains. The human brain is an evolutionary paradox. It is disproportionately large, consuming roughly 20% of the body's energy, despite making up only 2% of its mass. It is capable of abstract reasoning, recursive language, symbolic thought, and imagination traits that, as far as we know, no other animal possesses to the same degree. How did this organ evolve? And more specifically, how did it evolve so rapidly? The mainstream explanation involves a combination of factors: social complexity, tool use, language, and environmental pressures that favored intelligence. But there is a mystery in the timeline. The modern human brain, in terms of size and structure, appears to have reached its current form roughly 300,000 years ago. Yet behaviorally modern humans, those who made art, buried their dead, and engaged in symbolic thought, do not appear in the archaeological record until much later, perhaps 70,000 years ago. What happened during that gap? Was it purely cultural, a slow accumulation of knowledge and social norms? Or was there something else, something genetic, that unlocked the full potential of the brain? Here is where hybridization becomes intriguing. Neanderthals had brains as large as, or even larger than, modern humans. Denisovans, based on limited evidence, likely did as well. If these groups had cognitive abilities comparable to ours, then interbreeding with them would not have introduced something entirely new, but it might have introduced variation, new combinations of neural architecture that enhanced certain cognitive functions. For example, Neanderthal DNA has been linked to genes affecting brain development, particularly those involved in neural connectivity and synaptic function. Some researchers speculate that this could influence creativity, pattern recognition, or even susceptibility to neurological conditions like autism and schizophrenia, which some theories link to enhanced cognitive abilities in certain domains. Could the hybrid brain part Homo sapiens, part Neanderthal, part Denisovan, part unknown, be more than the sum of its parts? Could the genetic mixing have created neural plasticity, cognitive flexibility, or imaginative capacity that no single lineage possessed alone? It is a hypothesis, not a proven fact. But it offers a compelling answer to one of evolution's deepest questions. Why are humans so different from every other species? Perhaps because we are not one species. We are many blended into something unprecedented. As populations migrated and mixed, the genetic landscape of humanity became ever more complex. A maze of lineages intersecting and diverging across continents and millennia. To trace human ancestry is to follow a tangled web of movements across the globe, each migration leaving genetic signatures that persist to this day. Around 70,000 years ago, a small population of modern humans left Africa, possibly through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait at the southern tip of the Red Sea. This group, numbering perhaps only a few thousand individuals, would become the ancestors of all non-African populations alive today. They carried with them a subset of the genetic diversity present in Africa, a bottleneck that reduced variation but also set the stage for new adaptations. As they spread into the Middle East, they encountered Neanderthals. Interbreeding occurred, and the descendants carried Neanderthal DNA eastward into Asia and westward into Europe. In Asia, some populations encountered Denisovans, adding another layer of archaic ancestry. In Europe, successive waves of migration brought new genetic inputs, mixing and remixing over tens of thousands of years. Then, roughly 10,000 years ago, agriculture emerged in the Fertile Crescent, sparking a demographic explosion. Farming populations expanded outward, displacing or absorbing hunter-gatherers. In Europe, this manifested as the Neolithic expansion, which brought new genes related to lactose tolerance, lighter skin, and other adaptations. Later, around 5,000 years ago, the Yamnaya culture from the Eurasian steppes swept into Europe, introducing yet another genetic layer. These migrations did not erase previous populations, they blended with them, creating the genetic mosaic that defines modern Europeans. In Africa, the Bantu expansion carried genes, languages, and agricultural techniques across sub-Saharan Africa over the past 3,000 years, reshaping the continent's genetic landscape. In the Americas, waves of migration from Siberia populated the continents, with some groups retaining genetic links to East Asia and others developing unique adaptations. At every stage, populations met, mixed, and moved on. The result is that no modern human population is pure. Every group carries traces of these ancient movements, a testament to the fluidity and interconnectedness of human history. But beyond the physical journeys, there is another kind of inheritance, one written not in tools or bones, but in the stars themselves, in the knowledge that ancient peoples somehow possessed about the cosmos. Across the ancient world, cultures developed sophisticated understandings of astronomy. The Egyptians aligned their pyramids with Orion, S-belt, and tracked the heliacal rising of Sirius to predict the Nile's flooding. The Mayans created a calendar so precise that it accounted for the precession of the equinoxes, a phenomenon that takes 26,000 years to complete. The Aboriginal Australians encoded stellar knowledge into oral traditions, mapping the sky with stories that have been passed down for tens of thousands of years. How did they know? How did people without telescopes, without written mathematics, without the accumulated knowledge of centuries, develop such accurate astronomical models? Mainstream archaeology attributes it to careful observation over generations. The sky was their clock, their calendar, their guide for planting and harvest. With enough time and attention, patterns emerge. The movements of planets, the cycles of the moon, the slow drift of constellations, all of this could be learned through patient observation. But there is a persistent undercurrent of speculation that asks, what if some of this knowledge was inherited? What if ancient peoples received astronomical information from predecessors, either a lost Ice Age civilization or, more intriguingly, from hybridized lineages that carried not just genetic traits, but cognitive frameworks that made such knowledge easier to grasp? It is a fringe idea, and there is no evidence to support it. But it lingers because of the precision involved. The Antikythera mechanism, an ancient Greek device for calculating astronomical positions, is more sophisticated than anything else known from its era. The Nabta Playa stone circle in Egypt, over 7,000 years old, appears to align with celestial events. Göbekli Tepe's pillars may encode astronomical data. Could the people who built these structures have possessed inherited cognitive advantages, genes from archaic hominins that enhanced spatial reasoning, pattern recognition, or long-term memory? It is speculation, but not baseless. We know that certain cognitive traits have genetic components. We know that hybridization can introduce new traits. The question is whether any of those traits influenced humanity's early understanding of the cosmos. What is certain is that ancient peoples looked up at the sky and saw not chaos, but order. And in that order, they found meaning, guidance, and perhaps a sense of connection to something vast and timeless. Meanwhile, deep in the genome, researchers continued to find evidence that our hybrid ancestry was not just about cognition or appearance. It was about survival itself. In the sands of Egypt, among the naturally mummified remains preserved by the arid climate, archaeologists have occasionally discovered individuals with red or reddish-brown hair. Similarly, in Peru, some ancient mummies from the Paracas culture exhibit the same trait. In China, the Tarim Basin mummies, dating back nearly 4,000 years, also show red and blonde hair. For years, these finds fueled speculation. Some claimed they were evidence of lost European populations that had migrated far from their homelands. Others suggested they were proof of ancient hybrid lineages, perhaps descendants of mysterious archaic hominins. The truth, as science revealed, is more mundane. Red hair in these ancient populations is most likely the result of genetic variants that arose independently or through normal human migration and mixing. The MC1R gene, responsible for red hair and pale skin, is found in various populations and can appear in any ancestry given the right genetic combination. But the myths surrounding these red-haired mummies reveal something important about how we interpret the past. We are drawn to anomalies, to things that do not fit the expected pattern. And in those anomalies, we search for evidence of lost civilizations, forgotten histories, or hidden truths. The red-haired mummies are not evidence of hybridity with an unknown hominin, but they are evidence of human diversity, of the fact that ancient populations were genetically rich, variable, and interconnected in ways that modern homogenized populations are not. They remind us that the past was populated by people who looked different, lived differently, and carried genetic combinations that no longer exist. And in that sense, they are a kind of ghost echoes of lineages that have been absorbed, blended, and transformed into the humanity we know today. But beyond the physical, beyond the genetic, there is a deeper kind of hybridity one that exists not in the body, but in the mind, in the soul, in the very nature of what it means to be human. To be human is to live at the intersection of opposites. We are bodies, yet we dream. We are bound by instinct, yet we imagine futures that do not yet exist. We are animals, governed by hunger and fear, yet we create art, philosophy, and music that transcend survival. This duality is perhaps the most profound hybridity of all, not genetic, but existential. We are creatures of the earth and creatures of the mind. We are shaped by evolution, and yet capable of shaping evolution itself. We are hybrid beings not just in our DNA, but in our very nature. Ancient spiritual traditions recognize this. The concept of the soul, distinct from the body, appears in nearly every culture. The idea that humans contain a divine spark, something that connects us to the cosmos, is universal. Whether it is the Hindu Atman, the Christian soul, the ancient Egyptian Ka, or the Aboriginal Dreamtime spirit, the message is the same. We are more than flesh. Could this sense of duality be a consequence of our genetic hybridity? Could the blending of different hominin lineages have created a kind of cognitive dissonance, a mind that is pulled in multiple directions, toward survival and toward transcendence, toward the immediate and toward the eternal? It is a poetic idea, not a scientific one, but it speaks to something real. Humans are the only species that asks, why? We are the only ones who wonder about our origins, who look for meaning in the stars, who create myths and religions to explain our existence. That capacity to question, to seek, to imagine, is itself a kind of hybridity, a fusion of the material and the immaterial. And perhaps that is the true legacy of our hybrid ancestry. Not just stronger bones or better immune systems, but a mind that can hold contradictions, that can be both rational and mystical, both grounded and reaching for something beyond. As we stand at the edge of a new era, one where we can edit our own genomes, the question of what it means to be human becomes even more urgent and more uncertain. For most of history, human evolution was shaped by natural selection, environmental pressures, and random mutation. But now, for the first time, humanity has the power to edit its own genome. CRISPR technology allows scientists to alter DNA with precision, potentially eliminating genetic diseases, enhancing physical traits, or even introducing entirely new capabilities. The implications are staggering. We could, in theory, become the architects of our own evolution. We could eliminate genes that cause suffering. We could enhance intelligence, strength, or longevity. We could even introduce genes from other species, creating not through natural hybridization, but through deliberate design. But this raises profound ethical questions. Who decides what traits are desirable? Who has access to such technology? And what happens if we create new kinds of humans, genetically distinct from the rest of the population? In a sense, we would be repeating history, creating hybrid beings, just as our ancestors did when they interbred with Neanderthals and Denisovans. But this time, it would be intentional, controlled, and the consequences are impossible to predict. Some envision a future where genetic enhancement is commonplace, where children are born free of disease and optimized for success. Others fear a dystopia of genetic inequality, where the rich can buy superior genes, and the divide between haves and have-nots becomes biological. And then there is the possibility of something stranger still. What if, in editing our genomes, we inadvertently remove something essential, some ancient gene inherited from an archaic lineage that we do not yet understand the purpose of? What if the ghost DNA we carry, the fragments from unknown hominins, serve functions we have not yet discovered? Evolution is not always about addition. Sometimes it is about balance, about maintaining diversity, about keeping options open. Our hybrid ancestry may be a safeguard, a reservoir of genetic possibilities that could prove crucial in an unpredictable future. As we move forward, we must tread carefully. The power to shape our own DNA is both a gift and a responsibility, one that requires humility, wisdom, and an understanding that we are still learning what it means to be human. But the deepest truth of our hybridity may not be genetic at all. It may be cosmic. Every atom in your body was forged in the heart of a star. The carbon in your cells, the calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, all of it was created billions of years ago when massive stars exploded in supernova, scattering their elements across the universe. In this sense, we are all hybrids, not just of different hominin species, but of the cosmos itself. We are stardust, arranged in a particular way, animated by chemistry and electricity, capable of looking back at the stars and understanding where we came from. This perspective changes everything. It means that our origins are not just biological, but astronomical. We are not separate from the universe. We are part of it, expressions of its fundamental laws, participants in its ongoing story. The same forces that shaped galaxies also shaped us. The same processes that create elements in the cores of stars also create DNA in the cells of living beings. We are connected, at the deepest level, to everything that exists. And if we are hybrids of different species, different climates, different epochs of Earth's history, then we are also hybrids of different moments. In cosmic time, descendants of atoms that were born in the first stars, that traveled through space for eons, that eventually coalesced into a planet where life could arise and evolve and finally become aware of itself. This is the ultimate hybridity, not just genetic, but elemental, not just biological, but cosmic. We are the universe experiencing itself, asking questions about its own nature, searching for meaning in the patterns of matter and energy that gave us birth. And perhaps that is why the question of where we came from matters so much. It is not just about understanding our past. It is about understanding our place in the vastness of existence, about recognizing that we are both infinitesimally small and profoundly significant, both isolated on a tiny planet and connected to the infinite. Yet even with this grand perspective, the most immediate question remains unanswered, the question that science, myth, and philosophy all circle around but never quite resolve. Who are we, really? We know now that we are hybrids. The genetic evidence is undeniable. We carry DNA from Neanderthals, Denisovans, and possibly other archaic lineages whose identities remain hidden in the shadows of our genome. We are not a single, pure species. We are a blended mosaic of ancient encounters, of unions formed in times and places we can only dimly imagine. But knowing this does not answer the deeper question. It only reframes it. Are we more than the sum of our parts? Did the mixing of lineages create something genuinely new, something that transcends the limitations of any individual ancestor? Or are we simply the latest iteration in an endless cycle of evolution, no more or less significant than the hominins who came before? Science can map our genome, trace our migrations, reconstruct our family tree. But it cannot tell us what it means to be human. It cannot explain why we create art, why we wonder about the stars, why we feel love and loss and longing. Those answers, if they exist, lie somewhere beyond genetics, in the realm of consciousness, culture, and meaning. And perhaps that is the most important lesson of all. We are hybrids not just of different species, but of different kinds of knowing. We are creatures of reason and creatures of emotion. We are shaped by the past and yet free to imagine the future. The question of our origins will never be fully answered. There will always be gaps in the fossil record, ambiguities in the genome, myths that resist easy interpretation. And maybe that is as it should be. Mystery is not a failure of knowledge. It is an invitation to wonder. We are hybrids. But of what and to what extent, and what that ultimately means, these are questions each generation must explore anew with whatever tools and insights it has available. And in that exploration, in that endless search for understanding, we find not just answers, but something more valuable, the realization that the act of questioning is itself what makes us human. Picture the desert again, the same stars overhead, the same ancient wind. But now, imagine standing there with a new understanding that the body you inhabit is not a singular creation, but a tapestry woven from many threads. Threads spun by Neanderthals who survived Ice Age winters. Threads colored by Denisovans who climbed to the roof of the world. Threads from ghost populations whose names we will never know, whose faces we will never see, but whose genes pulse quietly in your blood. You are not just yourself. You are a meeting place, a convergence of lineages that span hundreds of thousands of years. You are a hybrid of species, of climates, of stories that stretch back to the very beginning of humanity and beyond. And in that hybridity lies not weakness, but strength. Not confusion, but richness. Every trait you possess, every ability, every quirk of personality is the result of countless ancestors navigating impossible challenges and surviving against the odds. You are the heir to their resilience, their ingenuity, their capacity to adapt and endure. But you are also more than genetics. You are a bearer of culture, of language, of ideas passed down not through DNA, but through teaching and tradition. You are shaped by the people who raised you, the stories you were told, the choices you have made. You are a hybrid of biology and experience, nature and nurture, past and present. And perhaps most profoundly, you are a hybrid of the finite and the infinite. You are mortal, your body will age, fail, return to the earth from which it came. But you are also part of a continuum, a lineage that stretches backward to the first life on this planet and forward into futures you will never see, but will nonetheless shape. To be human is to carry all this within you. To be human is to be many things at once: animal and dreamer, matter and consciousness, individual and collective. We do not know the full story of where we came from. We may never know, but we know enough to say this: we are hybrid beings. And in that hybridity, in that beautiful, complicated blending of origins, we find not just our history, but our humanity. If you enjoyed this journey through the mysteries of our ancestry, consider subscribing. The questions we've explored here are far from settled. And as science continues to uncover new evidence, new stories, new possibilities, there will be more to discover about who we were, who we are, and who we might yet become. The stars are still watching, and somewhere in the strands of your DNA, the echoes of ancient voices still whisper,